Back here on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. He's Chris Baccia. I'm Jimmy Sullivan, and now we are pleased to be joined by New York Post baseball columnist Ken Davidoff. Ken, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How about you guys?
Doing pretty well, thanks for asking. And let's get right into it. Earlier in the week, as the negotiations started to ramp back up between baseball and the Players Association, you wrote an article talking about how Rob Manfred and Tony Clark really need to hammer it out and get baseball back on the field for the fans. It seems like they're at least trying to do that. And Ken, I know this answer probably changes by the hour, but how optimistic are you right now that the two sides can come to an agreement and give us baseball in 2020?
Yeah, you're right. It changes by the minute. I just refuse to believe that these two sides will just sabotage their own sport even worse than they already have. So I continue to believe that there will be a deal, and until I'm proven wrong.
Ken, I'm curious, just seeing how the players have been so unified throughout this process, and even having the star power of a Mike Trout or a Pete Alonso, who have come out with this when and where sort of mantra, as you called it, a rallying cry that you said in your article at the Post last evening, really galvanized this movement for the Players Association to really move toward a potential agreement and have it changing and have an agreement come. To what extent does that reveal the larger grievances with baseball that go far back into CBAs that go past?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The answer is to a large extent. Yeah, there's a lot of lingering tension really going on about a decade now from the developments that have occurred in baseball that the players view as player unfriendly, whether that's the trend of teams tanking, whether that's kind of the eradication of the middle class player. You know, Garrett Cole still gets his money, but that, number 5 starter, lesser, outfielder doesn't get his money. You're talking about service time manipulation, items like this. There was a lot of tension before the coronavirus even hit, and the developments of this shutdown have just, intensified that.
Ken, I wanted to ask, because it seems like every time we get a proposal or even a potential deal, there seems to be a number of leaks on it, whether it comes from you or somebody else or other reporters. Do you think the players are unhappy to see a lot of this being dealt with through the media? Because even on Wednesday, we saw when it looked like for a little bit, maybe we were going to have a deal, all the proposals came through the media and everybody seemed to know everything. Do you think the players are really unhappy about that it seems like the two sides are kind of negotiating through the media?
I'm sure some players are unhappy and some aren't, just as some owners are unhappy and some aren't. The reality is just kind of the way things go nowadays.
And as far as the players, they've had unique support from fans, I would say, especially in an environment where both sides are really playing hardball here. Why is it that the players seem to have the support of fans? Is that a testament to the fact that maybe they have a better case? Maybe they are right to demand full prorated salary and things of this nature.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, Chris. I can only kind of theorize, right? I haven't I haven't interviewed every fan, and it's all anecdotal. But I think there's a few elements in play. I think you're right. I think people can relate to the idea of getting a full day's pay, especially. Right. And I think I think what we've seen is a lot of animosity toward the owners because they're not the ones who are putting themselves in harm's way. And in general, I'd say the owners have not comported themselves well during this shutdown. When you look at the ticket policies, even the best teams, the most friendly ticket policies aren't great. And then you talk about some of these owners going public the last few weeks and complaining that, we don't make as much money as you think. It's really tone deaf and terrible optics. And I think all that has contributed to, in my mind, the tide turning.
Ken, we've looked at the past here, so let's kind of look into the future. How worried are you about this spat to try to bring back the 2020 season in terms of a CBA that's going to expire near the end of next year, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of labor peace in sight between the players and the league?
Yeah, I'm not worried because it's my job to not have any emotions about this, right? If baseball goes out of business, I'll just do something else with my life. But yeah, I certainly as a fan should be worried. Yeah, this is terrible, and no doubt this is very foreboding for what's to come after next season.
So today being Thursday and this scheduled air for Saturday, certainly a lot may change between when we're able to share this with our viewers. But how do you envision a potential deal for a 2020 season looking? Are we more likely to settle at something like 65 or 66 games? And what are the chances that the owners will concede some of these future considerations that we've mentioned about potentially free agency where players have grievances there? What does this deal look like when all is said and done, if you had to guess?
That is a moving target.
Yeah.
But I will do my best. And then when you air this Saturday, everyone can see how wrong I was. Yeah, I think between 65 and 70 games, maybe a few more, a few more sprinkles thrown on top for the players' benefit. That's a good thought about future considerations, whether it's the removal of compensation for free agents this winter or increased minimum wage next year, something to that flavor.
Ken, just to backtrack for a minute, let's say hypothetically that winds up being the deal. 66 games, fully prorated. Why couldn't the owners have just done that 3 weeks ago or a month ago? Why did this have to be such a protracted fight? I know the players didn't want to back off fully prorated salaries, but it just seems like a lot of this has been more difficult than it needed to be when it came to the dollars and cents.
You're not wrong, Jimmy. I do think it's a little complicated. The origin story is a little complicated. One of you referenced my column about both sides owning up to their original sins.
Right.
When they walked away on March 26th, the owners were of the belief that the players understood if the games could be played if the games played only without paying fans, that the players would have to take another pay cut. That was the owner's understanding coming out of those meetings. And to be honest with you, I think that was the players' understanding coming out of those meetings. And I think something got muddled along the way from March 26th to May 1st or whenever you want to notate that. And the players strengthened their resolve that they only wanted 100% prorated, which is their right. That's fine. But I think that's what led to all those awkward proposals and all the wasted time.
And with that being said, is it possible or true that the Players Association, at least the brass that negotiated that now infamous March 26th deal, did they misrepresent what that deal looked like to their members of the union? And if that's the case, should the union have owned up to that original sin, as you called it, and potentially moved off of the prorated demand?
Yeah, see, the problem was, I do think I think the March 26th happens. I think the players are informed we are good to go, prorated pay. If we play again, prorated pay. And they didn't understand that it was in the agreement that the MLB, the owners, were going to come back and say, all right, we need to talk. And it's, look, again, I'm more philosophically aligned with the players. I get it. But it's in the agreement that we are going to have to talk about the economic feasibility of playing games without fans. We're going to have to at least talk about it. So to spend over a month saying, no, that doesn't exist, that's not in there, that was not a good use of time. And there's no doubt that some players and agents were not pleased with the way that all shook out.
Ken, I've read a number of articles over the past few days that there are maybe a handful of owners who are saying, you know what, I don't know if we want to play just because of the lost money and the points that you raised about playing without fans. I don't know if I'm putting you in an impossible situation here, but have you heard some of those things as well? Do you think that there are owners that would rather just say, hey, let's call 2020 a draw as opposed to playing 60 or 70 games without fans?
Yeah, Jimmy, I certainly have heard that among my sources. I've heard it from other media people. I honestly couldn't tell you exactly who feels that way, and I'm just a skeptic by nature. I think it's easy when you're in on a Zoom meeting or on a conference call to say, let's not even play. But then to kind of put the pen to paper on that, I think is something different. So I'm skeptical that any owners would truly go all the way to signing off on that idea.
I'm curious about the sort of politics of the dialogue and some of the things that were filtered through the media, and how Rob Manfred does an about face 5 days after he guarantees a season and then says, I can't guarantee it. The players say when and where in a unified force using their own platforms on Twitter. To what extent do these messages, have they affected the way this is played out? And was the tactic of Major League Baseball waiting until now it's June 18th without a deal, was that intentional so that they could be afforded a shorter season? Because if they were to agree at an earlier point, they may have been faced with a longer season, which was not in their interest.
Well, yeah, I guess you could argue that, they certainly, again, they wanted to pay the players less, less than the prorated. So, and again, I can't confirm this per se, but just think it through. Sure, it makes sense that we'll offer them these other packages for lesser pay, and then if we have to get them, they don't back off the prorated, then at that it'll be later in the calendar and there'll be fewer games. Yeah, I think that's pretty basic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ken, if there is a deal to be reached and these two sides do hammer it out and figure it out, we've heard obviously a lot from Rob Manfred and the players and some from Tony Clark too. Are there other parties at play here that could help out as well? Because we've seen the communication go back and forth between Dan Halem, the deputy commissioner, and Bruce Meyer, the MLBPA spokesman, and it's been kind of toxic and the dialogue has been almost non-existent. Is there any other people that we should be looking out for to say if a deal happens, they're one of the big reasons why?
That's an excellent question, Jimmy. And in theory, there are some people, just powerful agents, powerful players, powerful owners. At this point, however, those people have not come through. They still might. But yeah, that's a very fair question.
And as far as the bigger picture, as we mentioned about things like tanking and service time manipulation and qualifying offers, where the players have really felt they've gotten the short end of the stick, and TV revenue not being something that they get a piece of, is there a chance that this is a catalyst for larger changes to the game? What kind of currency do players have in these larger debates as they go forward into a new CBA after next season and things of this nature?
Oh, for sure. Sure, it's a catalyst. And again, even before coronavirus, there were going to be changes to some systemic issues. I mean, you mentioned tanking. The tanking all flows from the idea that the worse your record is, the more money you get to spend on the draft. So I do think that will change when you talk about something like that. Qualifying offer, it gets a ton of attention because it's bigger names.
Right.
But if you really think about it, it doesn't cause a great amount of damage. You're basically talking about the 5th to 10th percentile, or would that be 90th to 95th? I never know what to do those percentiles. I don't know if they teach you percentiles at Fordham.
I think 95th.
Yeah, 90th to 95th, right? Yeah, not 95 to 100. Garrett Cole, they get paid.
Right.
90 to 95, they do, get hit by that qualifying offer. So maybe they relent on that. Maybe they didn't realize it's not that big a deal. But yeah, for sure. When you talk about TV revenue, that's a different animal. Then you talk about revenue sharing, because revenue sharing goes hand in hand with a salary cap, which the players certainly do not want. But yeah, I do think both sides recognize that there do need to be some changes in the system.
Ken, I totally understand the issues with the numbers. I always have a very hard time with a lot of that stuff as well. We've had you now for over 10 minutes. We haven't even gotten into the health and safety. Among the people you talk to, how big of a fear is it that hypothetically they could come to a deal and start the season and then not be able to finish it because of some coronavirus outbreak over the course of the season?
Oh, it's a gigantic fear. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, you see these numbers, especially in Florida, in Texas, in California, in Arizona. How could you not be terrified by those numbers? They're horrifying. So yeah, that is a valid concern. I think their feeling is, they're just so, they're trapped in a dumpster fire. So all they are trying to do is get out of there safely and land the plane on these finances, and then they'll have to deal with the reality of the world and COVID.
And seeing today, Dr. Anthony Fauci, a member of the president's coronavirus task force, saying that football is something that he thinks may not happen unless the league can figure out a way to put players in a bubble. To what extent, I'm curious, we haven't heard a lot about the health and safety protocol agreement of the league. That's something that I assume is coming along, because we're more hearing about the financial and business side. Is it possible that there's a snag in that, or is that one area where the players and owners seem to be on the same page?
Well, Manfred said on, I think it was Wednesday the 10th, June 10th, the same day where he made his 100% promise, he said that they're very, very close on the health and safety stuff. Then this past Monday, when he backed off his 100%, he also said one of the reasons he wouldn't just universally implement a season was because they weren't fully in agreement on the health and safety. Bottom line is, I think they're far enough on the health and safety that I don't see that being a significant hurdle.
Ken, I wanted to ask you, you wrote an interesting article the other day about the Mets, and they're still trying to sell in the middle of a pandemic. What do you make of that whole situation? There were a lot of interesting details that you put forth in your article just about the Mets and that whole situation. What were your biggest takeaways from that?
Oh, well, full disclosure, I mean, there were two writers, two bylines on that story. Thornton McHenry, he's one of my colleagues, who's one of our business writers. So he wrote all the intelligence stuff. You know, I just put a few words together. But yeah, look, the Mets sale. I mean, it's just so Mets, right? I mean, they have this sweetheart deal with Steve Cohen, $2.6 billion. It was, they could keep SNY. That wasn't even for SNY, the good part. And you know, that falls apart, and then the coronavirus hits within a month of that, and here they are, just in a market where, you know, very few people want to spend that kind of money on a team and a sport that finds itself in self-inflicted peril. So certainly, if we're looking at the 2.6 billion number, you'd bet the under right now, or can they stick it out for another year or two or three until things calm down and maybe get back to that number?
He's Ken Davidoff, New York Post baseball columnist, helping us sort out everything that's going on in baseball, which has been somewhat of a mess as of late. Ken, thank you so much for hopping on with us, and best of luck to you, and stay safe.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, great job, guys. Really good questions.
Thanks.